Mark has been illuminating spark of light in the Sathya Sai organization of New Zealand. One of the original co-founders of the organization, he has, over the past 30 years, from 1987, served the organization successively in the role he loves most. As a grassroots member of the organization, his unwavering devotion to and faith in Swami have been the basis of his outstanding service to the Sai organization. Starting as a chairperson of the Auckland group, the present Mount Eden Center, he served as the prime mover of all activities and responsibilities, from transporting from and back to the Sai house every Thursday Swami's picture and altar requirements, setting up the altar, serving as lead singer, rallying the support of other members for the various tasks related to the conduct of center activities, cleaning up the center after bhajans, and serving in any capacity asked of him, including the hard work involved in organizing the meals menu and the preparation of savory dishes at regional functions and national retreats, and the difficult task of cleaning up after the events. The care, affection, and humility with which he carried out these activities are a measure of his devotion to the organization and his evolution as the true Sai devotee. Deeply enlightened by Swami's teachings, especially on all-inclusive love and selfless service, he has consistently endeavored to practice these two qualities in whatever task he undertook in the organization: dedicated, self-disciplined, understanding, refined and broad-minded. He shines as an exemplar of a true Sai devotee, fellow devotees of living in the world but not being of it. Well, Mark, thanks a lot for agreeing to do this interview with us.
You're welcome.
As you know, we want to capture how the organization started in New Zealand. So before we actually go into those questions and answers in terms of how the organization started, I'd like to know about yourself, where you're from, which school did you go to, things like that.
Okay, yeah, well, I was born here in Auckland, long time ago.
Long time? What year was it?
1956.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
going to be 60 in 3 months.
Uh-huh.
So I was born here in Auckland. I grew up in Papatoetoe, so from a baby. I spent my childhood there. So that's not far from here. Had a good childhood. I was the youngest of six boys and girls. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that was good. I was quite happy. So I'm always happy to remain in Auckland. From a spiritual point of view, we were Anglicans. Mum and Dad never went to church, but all we kids got sent off to church each Sunday. So we went to the Anglican Church, Church of England. So from about 3 years to 10 years. 10 years it somehow changed a little bit, and I felt very uncomfortable being there. Now as an adult, I'd probably be, if I was a member, I'd be saying, look, we've got to do something about this transition. When kids go to intermediate, something's happening here.
Right.
You got to make it easy for them. Otherwise, I might have stayed there. I might have become,
So going to this church, is that church part of the school, or was it totally separate church? Is it
No,
church?
it's
just an
yeah, churches
okay.
are not usually we're not a school with a church.
Oh, right, okay.
Usually that's only Catholic
see,
colleges are mostly the ones that have the schools with churches, etc. So I got a good grounding in Christianity, and of course in those days, you had Bible class at school. It wasn't forbidden to teach things about God.
Yeah.
So I used to enjoy the Bible lessons. I think mostly it was kind of, you just hear good stories, and you'd have quizzes, and I always liked quizzes. So it's like answering maybe that was the best part of it, answering the quiz at the end.
So what was your age at that time when?
Well, I went to church from like 3 till 10. So I was 10 years of age. Okay, so that was my grounding in Christianity. And I always think that's great for kids to have some sort of grounding there, because whatever might happen in their teenage years, they've got a grounding to come back to. Thinking you're going to just give them the choice to develop when they're older is not likely to happen.
Yeah,
so
quite true, yes.
We'll just chuck that little bit of that there. So I was always interested in, generally, I had a bit of an interest in spiritual things, A couple of things I think I remember specifically that did have a bit of an impact was, my brother gave me a big lecture one day about non-violence and why you shouldn't hit people just because
your
they
elder
hit you.
brother?
Yes, my older brother. He's like 8 years older than me.
Yeah.
very wise guy. Not necessarily particularly spiritual, but I remember him talking to me about why you, just because somebody hits you, doesn't necessarily mean you should hit them back. I didn't think he was particularly into non-violence, but somehow, maybe it was something I was saying, he felt like he should explain this to me. And I took that in, you know, in quite a strong way, actually. And then I also remember watching a documentary about Gandhi. And I remember them showing these you know, police with sticks. You know,
so where did you see that? TV was there at that time?
Yeah, we had TV in New Zealand from 1960.
Okay, all right.
We didn't get on ourselves till about 65. I was 9 years of age then. But I remember, so, you know, around about probably 12, 13 or something, I remember seeing this documentary, and police were hitting these people with sticks, and they weren't fighting back. And I was watching, I was quite stunned, you know. I said to my brother, gosh, they're really hitting those people, you know. It was real life violence. This wasn't just a movie, and they were whacking them with these sticks. And he said, yeah, they are. He was reinforcing the point, yeah, that's what happened, you know. And it was a shock. And at the end of this movie, it was about Gandhi, this documentary, they quoted Gandhi saying, I believe in the supremacy of the moral law, the law of love and truth. You know, it touches me even hearing it now.
Yes.
And I had a sense of what he meant. You know, I couldn't explain that in words, but that really hit me. I believe in the supremacy of the moral law, the law of love and truth. And I sort of understood what he meant, you know. I mean, what is truth? But, you know, so I was only about 12 or 13, and that made a bit of an impact on me, that did.
So did that impact encourage you to read more about Gandhi?
No, it didn't, actually.
No, okay.
I did later on, but a little bit. But, so there was something there, you know. For me, later now, I just realised, you know, that for all of us, anybody who's a Swami devotee and not, you know, we're all children of God, so you're a Sai devotee whether you believe in him as Swami or Jesus or Allah. He was there from our birth and before. So I realise now, like, he was guiding me all the way through. I was thinking of one experience too. It wasn't like a big thing, but I remember one time, I must have been probably only 9 or 10, I think I was still at primary school. And like I said, it wasn't particularly spiritual or anything like that, but I remember pondering I must have been pondering about Jesus or something. What was Jesus? Jesus and God? Maybe it was after a Bible class or something, I don't know. I was thinking about something to do with Jesus and God. And I remember pondering on it quite deeply. I think I was walking home from school, and I remember this thought coming to me as I spoke about it. It was just like, the sense, it was almost a thought, I am Jesus. You know? And I remember that coming to me, just like the sense that I and Jesus are one. It must have been like one of those moments where I was just, something just connected, and there was just somehow insight, like, broke through.
Amazing, that age,
and I'm not trying to say I was some kind of holy thing or anything like that, but I just do remember that moment when I just was pondering on it, and it just seemed right. I am Jesus. Somehow there was a sense of oneness there.
That's a good feeling, eh?
Yeah, but I was, you know, like I was, 9 or 10 or something, so I didn't, you know, that was it. It was just this brief thing, but I somehow do remember that. And another thing about when I was younger is that when I was, just after I came to Swami, a couple of months, so that was 1977, I found out about Swami in the beginning. We went out for my mother's birthday a couple of months later. And somehow she told me about this dream she had not long after I was born. So she'd never told me this before. And I'm saying, what dream, Mum? You know, she had this dream that she came outside and Jesus was taking me away. She looked up into the sky, and there in the sky was Jesus leading me away on a donkey. And she called out something like that, Jesus is taking Mark away on a donkey. You know? Amazing. And she said, and then I think it was the woman from next door, they were actually Quaker people, I think, by memory, but either that or it was an angel. Anyway, this woman was like an angel, or there was an angel on the roof next door, and the angel flew and brought me back down to Mum.
Ah.
And so here I am, 2 months into having given my life to Swami. My mother's telling me this amazing story. You know, I mean, what a dream to have.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, Mum wasn't into spiritualism. She didn't go to church. She wasn't really into God at all in herself, in a way. You know, she's a very good person. And she's telling me this dream, and my ears are pricking up because I'm thinking, wow, Swami, that's...
All right.
And I felt it was like, because Swami was taking me at that time, and I thought it just somehow related to, this was her dream, you know, and she understood God and Jesus, but it was Swami who had come to take me away.
Interesting. So you have been spiritually born right from the beginning.
Yeah, I didn't know it at the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean,
what?
you know,
going to church and all these things happening, you know.
There's a record which I won't tell you. I'll just tell you there's a record of my teen years which shows that I was anything far from spiritual. But even in my teen years, I became, one of the key things was Edgar Cayce, an American psychic. He just died about 1945, I think.
Yeah.
Have you heard of him?
No.
Oh, he was an amazing guy. He would go into a trance and he could give readings both on people's health and their past lives anywhere in the world. He could do it if you just give him your name and address, he would do one for you. He could tell what was wrong with you physically, or he'd do what they called life readings, where he'd talk about what's happening in your life that's been affected by past lives. So you can get a whole host of books on him. And I read a book called Many Mansions, which is somebody looked at all these readings of his, they're all recorded, written down. It was written by Gina Seminar, and it's about reincarnation, essentially. It's called Many Mansions. In my father's house there are many mansions. That's a quote from the Bible, hence the title of the book. This book just talks about reincarnation from Edgar Cayce's readings and spirituality in general in such a wonderful way. It was truly one of the most wonderful books I've ever read. My wife Girija also read this book. Amazingly enough, at about the same age, or about the same time, we both read this book. Didn't find that out till 30 years later or something, but it was an amazing book. And eventually there's a connection from there to Swami when I went looking for books.
Right. So we've been trying to capture about your background in terms of your education and things like that, but you have already covered about your spiritual background, how it all came about. So just tell us about your first visit to Sai Baba.
Okay, so that was 1981. So, sorry, I hope I don't talk too much, but I'll just do that connection then.
Yeah.
I was, in 1977, I was working in a bank in Onehunga, an Auckland suburb. Used to have an hour lunch break, so I went down, there was a little bookshop. I mean little, it was like about barely the size of this room. And he sold, it was a new age bookshop. So I found this bookshop. I went down there looking for Edgar Cayce books, but they didn't have the book I wanted. And so this shop assistant who was there, she wasn't the owner, she, for some reason, by the grace of God, it wasn't for some reason, you know, this is how Swami hooks us. He knows the time and he controls absolutely everything. She tells me, she says, oh, you'd probably like this fellow Charles is always talking about. Charles was the owner of the shop. She says, oh, yeah, I didn't know, so I just call him Subby Ubby, you know. And she starts telling me a little about this man, and she didn't know much. But just that Charles was fascinated with him. So something about it caught my interest. And this is what I find with all, there's so many side devotees in my experience. It's like, on any other occasion, this might not have caught their interest. But on this occasion, this book, or this picture, or that song, the bhajan, or something they heard, they'd heard it before. Just clicks them, something about it. You know, you can't define it in words. It's just a guy. So she said, come back tomorrow, you'll see Charles then. So I came back tomorrow. It was just interesting. And I said to him, I said, look, the sister was telling me about this guy. She called him Sabi Abi. And he says, oh, Sai Baba. And so he starts telling me all about these stories. They were actually pretty much all stories from Man of Miracles. About this man, you know, who's you know, making the lame to walk and the blind to see, doing these miraculous things. And I had read about Yogananda. Actually I got it out of the library. Even Many Mansions I got out of the library. And then I got this book, Sayings of Yogananda. which is just a collection of his sayings. I found that really, really good. I was about 16, 17 then. And found that pretty amazing. I found that really, so that was my first introduction. I did read books on yoga, did a little bit of yoga, but that was more deeper spirituality I'd read about. And he died in 1952. Maybe I saw something about some others who had died, you know. And so I listened with great interest to these stories about Sai Baba, and I said, oh, that's amazing, isn't it? I said, when did he die? And he said, he's not. He's alive today. He's in India. You can go and see him. I tell you, I just thought, wow, a modern day Jesus. It was like, you know, somebody's doing, you know, he's making the lame to walk and the blind to see. And he was alive today, and you could go and see him, not like some of these other guys that I'd heard about or read about. They're gone. Yeah. He was here. I was so excited. I was, you know, to know that someone like Jesus was here today was amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I bought the book for some of $1.50, Man of Miracles. We know him read. I was a slow reader, so I didn't read it overnight. It took me a couple of weeks, and I read this book. And having read Edgar Cayce, which was pretty thorough and a very general spiritual, it wasn't like it was just Christianity or anything like it. It was very general, and it was about reincarnations, and it was spot on book. This book made perfect sense to me. So it's a Man of Miracles for so many people, as for so many people who read the book, but you might actually take the time to watch this. They will identify with this, that they read that book and it was just amazing, because you read he did the journey looking for God for us all. Yeah. And so you read his journey, going to different gurus and his journey to God there, and then he finds Sai Baba and he describes him and his experiences with him, and I finished the book and I'm thinking, this is it.
This is what's happening, yeah.
It made perfect sense with everything I understood. This is God, he's here. And so
your interest built up on Sai Baba. So how did you contact other people who was also involved in?
Yeah, there weren't many people to contact. There was no Sai organisation on a website or on the phone, let alone on a website.
So how you all started? Can you tell us about that?
So Graham Stewart ran. There was a well-known news bookshop called Goodies Bookshop in New Zealand. Yeah, we later came to run the bookshop. Who would have known? This is the grace of God. I'm going into Goodies Bookshop to find out about Sai Baba. Absolutely no. I was 20 years of age. Absolutely no idea that in another 20 years I would have been running this bookshop with my wife. Who would have thought? And it was just like such a contrary thought. Let alone be married to an Indian woman. Yeah. My life was taking a very different turn. And I'd like to emphasise that too, because I'll mention that later. It will come up later. Here I am, like 20 years of age, in New Zealand, a predominantly European population, Christian-based. The Hare Krishnas were there. They were all considered a bunch of weirdos, everybody, of course. And then, I'm into, I was living on a flat with 7 other people. Yeah. Parties were like a regular feature. Yeah. And I was doing all those typical things. Young guy, I was a young, drinking. I wasn't really I wouldn't say I had a drinking problem as such or anything, but, I'd get into it like any other hours on the night. You go out, New Zealanders, tend to drink to get drunk. That's essentially what it was. You're not drinking because you're thirsty. Sorry, Swami, I don't even like to mention that. He doesn't actually like you talking about negative things, but this is how it was. Yeah. Big time meat eater, because that's what you did in New Zealand. And doing all those things. And then at 20 years of age, suddenly I find God, and not just like a Christian sort of version, a well-known version. This is like this short, fuzzy-haired Indian man. And this was so out of the ordinary. And so over the next few months, I become a vegetarian. I give up drink.
Oh, right.
I stop listening to all the heavy music that I used to love. And I'm listening to nice peaceful music. And, telling my best friend, actually, I'd appreciate it if you didn't shoot birds with your rifle out of this bedroom, because I want to keep a nice atmosphere in there. It's like shooting birds. Anyway.
So when you stopped eating meat and drinking, is that by reading the teachings of Swami, right? Obviously. Yeah. Or was it?
It was more than that. It was just I'd read the book Man of Miracles, and I probably got another. I was hungry for anything, so I'd start reading books. But I just felt inside. Plus, I had a dream which helped me become a vegetarian. And I started fasting. So I started fasting on now and again, and then I started fasting once a week. So I saw Swami, so I started fasting on Tuesdays. You know, that sort of stopped and started as time went by. I didn't always continue it.
So how did it started with meeting other people, as forming a center? Or?
Well, Graham Stewart had Goodies Bookshop. He even changed the name to Sai Baba Education Centre, but it got changed back.
Did he? Oh, okay.
Yeah, because he got into Swami. He'd been over there and had bhajans. Now, so that was 77 here. So I went to his bookshop, and he was showing films. He had a little projector, and there were some films that were made. Richard Block was making them at that stage from America, and he would show me some films on Baba. And that was, fascinating. I was hungry for anything I could get. So actually seeing movies of him was amazing. And so he was it. There was no organisation as it. No other people. There were a few other devotees around. No one was having any bhajans. Then somebody started some bhajans. Was it Gillian Lawler? She started having bhajans at her place, and so there were just a few people got together.
So any of those been to Prasanthi?
Yes.
I did. Oh.
There was actually a group here that had started and stopped, and they were really in Swami. They went over there, they even got a big house together, I think, and they were kind of, doing the Indian thing, I think, dressed in Indian, taking Indian names, some of them, I think, that sort of thing. A little bit perhaps still connected to the hippie era. But that sort of started and stopped. So there were a few people around who managed to somehow connect and get together. I knew none of them, so I was a real novice, of course.
So you were the youngest in the group?
Yeah, I would have been at the time. So then Gillian started having bhajans, so I started getting used to... actually, it wasn't there first. No, my first bhajan was at Goodies Bookshop. Graham, the bookshop moved over to High Street. It was in the city of Auckland, in Auckland City. He moved it to a high street and had he petitioned off a little area for a room, just half the size of this living room or something. And he started having bhajans there.
So were they Sanskrit bhajan or in English?
They were. So he would just have a printed sheet. There were a couple of dozen bhajans, and he would lead them all and follow. He would lead the whole lot, because nobody else was singing. I had no
idea.
Was
there a tape or something? You listen to the tapes too? Or?
No. There probably might have been some tapes. I didn't have any. So all I knew was he was talking about having some bhajans, and I'm thinking, so I don't remember reading about those in the book.
Any instrument? They're playing an instrument?
He had a small harmonium.
Harmonium.
Yeah. And I thought, yes, that's right. I remember he's insane. He's singing these bhajans or whatever they are. So it's supposed to be good. So I wanted to do it. Okay. I have no idea exactly what they were or what they sounded like. But I remember Swami said that, that was good. I mean, I didn't even know he was called Swami then. Because it doesn't say that in the book, as I remember. So he was just Sai Baba. So he said they were good. So I wanted to do it. If he said it, let's do it. That's a good thing for your spiritual growth. And so I go along there, and so he's leading and following, and it's all a little bit sort of strange for me. It's all in Sanskrit, so we just started getting used to singing them. But I can tell you, at the end of the first bhajan, he wouldn't go through the whole arti song. It's a long Sanskrit song, pretty hard for New Zealanders, because the Prajis used to come for these bhajans, and there's quite a few of them. It was the whole family, and so we'd stand up at the end, and he'd just sing Narayana Narayana Om, just sing the Narayana, and he'd had a little bell, and he'd ring the bell while he was doing this, and wave the flame.
So how long would this bhajan go for? About an hour?
No, not even that. About something like that, 45 minutes or something. Sing about a dozen bhajans, I guess. In those days, it was like the tradition for bhajans was, slow, medium, and fast speed, and you'd be singing each line twice. Yeah. I can't believe how many we sang on that. We used to sing a lot more than 9 too. You used to just only sing 9. So my first bhajan, they're doing this Narayana Narayana Om, and then we get to the end, Jai Bolo Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba Ji Ki Jai, and they all shout out Jai, and I remember I think almost leapt out of my skin, I think, oh wow, I'm not kidding, I feel real right when they're all Jai, but I still remember also, it's like, I'm saying this because I want people to understand, Indians in particular. I know they like the arti so much, and we've removed it in so many centres. Yeah. But that was my experience of it. As a newcomer, and I was quite into taking everything on board. But it was like I'm in there, and suddenly, we're singing these Sanskrit songs. Okay, well, this is all new. And then, suddenly everybody's standing up. Oh, okay, standing up. All the guys down front lighting the flame. What the heck's going on there? Hey, he's ringing a bell, Narayana, and then they're singing a song, and then all of a sudden, Jay, and you're leaping out of your skin. It's like, okay, yeah, that's a bit different. But, I was 20 and I was happy to have new experiences. But, in terms of, it's still a very strange thing for the average European Westerner. So
especially when you're only 20 years old.
Yeah, and it's just natural for Indians, and so this has been sometimes a little bit of a conflict, but I beg people to understand that one day Arti will be for the whole world, without a doubt, and everybody will do it. It's like sometimes when you just give in and let people do it their own way, sometimes they'll end up saying, no, let's just do it your way. But it's all got to happen naturally.
So how other people came together and you form a center, or what happened?
So that was 78, so there was a bit of a transition. We did them in the shop, then there was some regulation we couldn't be in there at night because of security or whatever. Another woman started them about the end of 77, and that continued a few months.
You're still meeting every Thursday?
It was different days.
Different dates. Okay.
See, Thursday was a later thing. For us here in New Zealand, we had no attachment to any particular day. So now people think it's like, you can't have them on any other day but Thursday. It's like Swami's happy with you singing bhajans any day of the week, believe me.
True.
It's perfectly happy.
But a very convenient day.
Yeah. So Thursday is a good holiday. We did it for a few months. So there I started meeting a few more. But again, it was good because they were in Swami's teachings. David and Linda Phillips used to come along at that stage. David was an Australian, lovely man. He was a lawyer, married an American woman, Linda. They'd been into the ashram, totally dedicated to Swami. Beautiful people. Linda played the harmonium. She sang beautifully.
She's the one who's now in Nelson?
That is correct.
Oh, okay.
David sadly passed away a couple of years ago. Though I heard he had Swami sitting on his bedside or something before he, at some time in his last few days or weeks. Good man, lovely, good heart. And he would sing very passionately to Swami, and always that made an impression to me. This man was so devoted, and I could always see that. And lovely, sincere guy. So I got to know them, and I always remember. I think we celebrated birthday at her place that year in November, but I always remember it must have been about a year or 6 months later. It's probably in 6 months. We had a gathering at their place. And I remember him coming up to me and saying, he says, hello, look, it's been about 6 months or more, I think. And he said to me, look, I feel like I know you, but I don't know your name. We'd been going along there for so many months. We did not talk, we just sit quietly afterwards. I don't think we had tea or anything. But it was like, it was all, you'd come along. And actually, that's the way Swami wants it. But somehow we didn't have a big social gathering. I was a bit younger than them, so some of them knew each other. They'd been to India, so they had the common background. I didn't. So I felt a little bit out of it in some ways. But I always remember, when people talk about notions these days, I'm thinking, yeah, you should have seen what it was like when I was around, It'd been like months. I think, I've got a feeling it was a year, but thinking back, it can't have been that long. But it was quite a long time to think that, he didn't know my name and we'd barely even spoken. And so slowly we started getting to know each other. So it stopped again though. Then July 78. So that's the key point. I'm actually in Goody's bookshop by the grace of God. Everything is by the grace of God.
Of course.
Lord has determined everything. Swami knows everything. He's controlling them. I'm actually in Goody's bookshop. And this red-headed man with a big red beard is in there. Young guy, he's about 5 years older than me. Phil Connell. He's fresh back from India. I just see him talking with Reba, the woman who was running. They'd actually just bought the bookshop off Graham Stewart. Reba and Roger Douglas and her and another lady were running it. I hear him talking about something about bhajans and starting one, you see. And I was pretty reserved, so I didn't want to go and say anything. But, as soon as he'd gone, I went and spoke to Reba and I said, sorry, but was that man, I heard him saying something about, bhajans or something. She says, oh yes, he's going to start. It's Phil Connell. He's going to start bhajan, whatever. So Phil, fresh back from India, he started a bhajan. And that was the first, so the bhajans had started and stopped. He started then, it was about end of July 78.
So what's happening in the bookshop or
No.
somewhere else?
He started it and he found a little room, wasn't even a room, it was a little partition place underneath the Crystal Palace Picture Theatre on Mount Eden Road near Auckland there, in Auckland.
All right. Is that theatre still there?
It is, yeah.
Oh.
Well, you know, it's like there's a picture theatre on top, and there's like an area underneath, which is like a small hall they probably could use for, you know, dancing or whatever.
Okay.
I don't know, but you go underneath and you go across this, you know, so it's about the size of the picture theatre underneath. You can imagine that, you know, about 30 metres across. You'd go right across to the other side, and didn't actually have a door. It was just an open entrance, and you'd go in, and you'd have a space smaller than this room, a little dark alcove that was more like a partitioned off place rather than an actual room. And this is where we would meet, and we had bhajans there. That is the bhajan that continues to this day as Mount Eden Centre.
Oh, okay.
So that bhajan has been continuing for the last 38 years this July, August. And so, you know, 6 people was a crowd. You know, so you know, we get somewhere between maybe 6 and 10 people, or sometimes there are only 2 or 3. Occasionally.
So what was the format of that meeting, the bhajan format?
It was very simple, and just, you know, it's 3 arms. I don't remember this precise because it was sort of pretty informal, but, you know, 3 arms, sing the bhajans. They were, I think they did start singing the arati, that song, once Phil started his. And that
was it in the altar setting or? In the
they do it on an altar. So you have to bring everything with you. And set up a small altar, you know, light the candles. We'd sing 3 arms, sing the bhajan, Ganesh bhajan, and then sing all the bhajans, and you know, probably a dozen or more, and then, you know, finish with arati, and that's it. We'd sometimes just have a brief chat afterwards, and we'd all go off home. Right. And then, like it was on Mondays or Tuesdays or something, whatever night we could get. So then we had a hall. It wasn't as it was today too. So it had these big things, you know the hall probably, but it had these big partitions down the middle, and we could only use the front part because, again, there was only half a dozen people there. I remember them saying sometimes Linda and David started bringing along the altar stuff. They were the key people, and there was occasion when they'd come along, set it up, and just on the odd occasion, once or twice, nobody else there, and so he'd sing a few bhajans and then pack it all up and go home. I think it was costing $6 a week for the hall, which of course they paid themselves. You know, they just took care of it. Nobody was asking for money or anything. About September 78, John and Jeannie came back from India. John and Jeannie Peel.
All right.
Now, if you speak to Harmony, they've got quite an amazing experience too. They'd actually stayed in the ashram for a year after a trip to Australia. They went to see Swami. They took their young son Jason, so he was over there with them for a year. Jeannie's mother actually stayed on. She stayed on there for about 35 years. A rare and truly amazing thing for a Westerner to be able to do, to stay on at the ashram for 35 years. Wonderful piece of grace for her. She now has returned, and she's living with between Jeannie and her brother. So then they'd gone, so it was about 74. They came back, went for another trip about 3 months in 78. And they returned. They had 2 young children. Tosin was about 6 at that stage, and Daniel was about 1.5 years. So I remember Jeannie being in there nursing Daniel. So I mention that because they are key people. And so they certainly brought strength to the bhajans too. Jeannie sings beautifully. John was an amazing singer. He was also a musician. He played the guitar, and he was always keen on the tambourine. So he really added something to it. He could sing with such passion and devotion. Both very devoted people. So,
doing all bhajan singing, was there any idea came that some service to be done? Or okay.
So we started we'd have that, and we'd have a study circle on Sundays. Just at people's places. We would just do what Swami says. We'd read the book, share. You know, sometimes it's just a few, again, still few, but slowly just a few numbers grew. Nearly all Europeans. And except the Prajik family used to come regularly too.
Prajik from Henderson.
Yes, that's right. And so, you know, it started growing. We got Bernie coming. Bernie was the Canadian who came along about 1980, I think. So you could get, you know, 10 to 12 people, sometimes a few more. We'd celebrate birthday, and even if those days, like we'd have a celebration, 78 would have a celebration. We'd hire a hall, and everybody would crawl out of the woodwork. You get about 100, 150 people there, you know.
That's a good number.
Yeah, so some people knew about them. They'd come along there, and you know, that's it. We'd hired Gandhi Hall, which is the one on Victoria Street in Auckland at that stage. And I think we used Gandhi Hall for several years running. And so what was that, 78, 79, similar. And so there were a few more people coming along. It wasn't huge, still small.
So when did the idea came that we should form a community?
1980,
yeah,
about June. Who should visit? Jagadisan from Malaysia.
Oh,
well, if you want a boost to do something, you know, just send Jagadisan along. He's Swami's dynamic little ball of energy. Well, he came along. I remember, so again, by the grace of God, he used to travel, work for the government, so he'd travel overseas for the government. And of course, wherever he'd go, he would take Swami. Now, I remember saying he got to Wellington. He actually said there was a little bit of a vacuum in Wellington, but he came to Auckland. And so he came along to Budgeons, and here he is sitting in Budgeons. As he do is he's playing. We were at the house actually at first. I remember he'd got a couple of buckets and pots, and he was playing tumbler on his buckets and the pots there, and it sounded good too. You know, he could just use anything. And he talked to us about Malaysia and what he was doing and the service, and it was just so thrilling to have him along. And he carried Swami's energy so immensely. And he only found Swami in 1976 too. So he wasn't like he was a long-time devotee, but you know, he was so dynamic, so devoted, and had such wonderful energy. And he had spoken to John, Phil, the others, about encouraged us to actually form a proper centre and become affiliated with the council. So we were growing, we were able to do that. And so we discussed that. They went over to the Third World Conference in November 1980. It was the Third World Conference, John, Phil, and a few other people. And they were allowed to participate in the actual conference as representatives of New Zealand. So that was really good. So they came back. We had our first centre meeting. We formed official, you know, filled criteria. You got to have 9 people, etc.
Right.
We had our first meeting about the end of January 1981, and we got our official affiliation with the World Council, you know, just a few months later. We had our first, one of the first things we did. I'd been involved with another group. We'd have some weekend camps. And so I suggested trying this. So our first camp at Peter Snell's Youth Village up at Whangaproa in North Auckland. Just a small camp with a few rooms, etc. We had about 25 people come. So, you know, we were all active, getting ready for that, doing a program, getting a booklet set up.
So there was a weekend camp?
It was a weekend camp. So Friday night to Sunday afternoon. Thoroughly loved it. And of course, for all people there, you know, we're so used to the net these days. You'll remember yourselves, but you've got to think back and remind yourself sometimes, yes, you couldn't look up on net. There weren't New Age bookshops everywhere, there still aren't. You know, to find books on Swami, you know, Swami had to bring you. You know, it was quite noticeable in those days, and still is a little bit. Anybody you spoke to, if you were talking to somebody who knew about Swami, they were probably a devotee. So it was great fun. Somebody who knows about Swami, oh wow, you know, it's devotee. It was really, really wonderful. So we enjoyed that. And we had another retreat in June and another one later that year. So we had 3 retreats that year. In fact, we basically had 3 retreats every year in those first few years. So we had that. We kept busy. So we'd have the bhajans on, whenever it was, Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, I don't know. But we'd have bhajans, and then on the Sundays, we would have a study circle. We had devotional singing. We did this at John and Jeannie's place. Their house in Alice became like the centre. We'd have the bhajans at the hall. On Sundays, we would have singing for about an hour, and then follow that with a study circle on Sunday nights.
What sort of service were you guys doing those days?
The bhajan was just normal standard bhajan.
Any service?
We would, but it was more one-off.
Oh, I see.
So we were looking for opportunities. So, you know, one day we might be trying to get some fire with some people. We would visit rest homes, But they would start and then, you know, stop sort of thing. We'd keep them going for a while and they'd stop. Remember, this is just one centre of very few people.
Yeah.
We did manage to start feeding the, we were taking some food into the homeless people who obviously had some drinking problems on Saturday mornings at one stage. That lasted, I think, a few months. Then I think they sort of, I think they might have all got taken away to a rehabilitation, whatever. So things happen. We were always trying to look for service activities, but it tended to be more one-off activities. Right. Or small things at the start. The rest home was one thing that sort of would start and stop and start.
So you had any overseas visitors besides Jaga? I mean, anyone else came along in a conference?
No.
I can't remember that.
We didn't. So no. So, you know,
how about
it was small. We would just Goodie's Bookshop was still the sort of place for books, and they would buy films, and so that was 1981, and it was May 1981 when I first went to India.
All right. Okay. Tell us about the trip. Yeah.
So, so I'd been, you know, with Swami for 4 years by that stage, so I knew who he was. Hadn't seen him or anything, but
you went in a group to India or on your own?
I went on my own. So, and I arrived there. I remember it's 16th of May. No, 17th of May. I was actually on there. Sorry, 16th of May. 17th of May I arrived, and I was outside Vrindavan.
Yeah.
And I got there early evening. It was just dusk. I went over there. One of the other guys, Kerry Flyger, who had also started the centre with us, he was already there. He had written back the days again, no email. I'm sorry to keep harping on about no emails, but you're writing. It'd take about a week for a letter to get there, 6 to 7 days. And he mentioned there was another guy over there, New Zealander. You've heard of him, Richard Nelson. I think he was from Hastings or Napier. He was a dentist, and he mentioned this guy he'd met. That has bearing. So I arrived at Vrindavan. So I'm outside the gates there, you can't go in, you know, and I'm looking keenly through the gates with my pack on my back, you know, keenly waiting to get my first darshan of Swami, you know. I'd never seen him, so remember, so I'd known about him 4 years, so this was an exciting time for me, going to see Swami. You know, I could feel the emotion coming up even just talking about it. So I'm looking through the gates, and it took quite a while. I was there a couple of hours at least, and it's getting darker and the lights are going, and I'm finding out about the bugs of India, the number of Indian bugs, my gosh. We are so lucky in New Zealand.
Yeah.
You know, so they're all flapping around and pestering me a little bit, and I'm trying, you know, because I know they're all waiting, and something was happening inside, and I did get just a glimpse. I could see the fuzzy hair, you know, because he's so short too. You know, just the fuzzy hair as he went up the steps. I could see a bit, and I'm looking, trying to get my dash, keep my eyes glued. But finally, I got something, and that was actually my mother's birthday. So I always thought it was just a little bit significant, but it wasn't a real proper darshan. 4 days later, 21st of May, Swami was giving darshan only on Sundays and Thursdays. That was sort of pretty typical in those days at different times. So I was staying in rooms in Whitefield. That's another story too. Here I am, a Kiwi, arrived there. I was not experienced at travelling at all, not at all. So I was a bit of a novice. I wasn't really good at these things, shall we say. And India was just an amazing place to take, and I was just sort of looking and laughing and smiling, thinking, oh well, you know, some things you didn't like, other things. It's like, okay, well, it's in there, I guess. So after standing there for a couple of hours here, there were a group of people talking nearby. And it's a couple of hours, must be, you know, after 9, it's dark, 9:30 or more, I think. One of these guys breaks away and comes over and says, hi, you know, have you just arrived? Obviously, you know, I had my pack there. And so he came to give me a hand. And I said, yeah, I have. He says, where are you staying? I says, look, I really don't know at the moment. I've got a friend here. I was going to try and look for him, but I have no idea exactly where he is. Yeah. And he says, where are you from? And I said, oh, I'm from New Zealand, because he asked about my friend. And he said, really? And who should this man be but Richard Nelson, who Kerry had written him out, by the grace of God. Yeah. Huh? I mean, I'm standing there from, you know, a Kiwi from miles away, and who should be just about 10 feet away, but the New Zealander who Kerry had written to me about. Yeah. I mean, does Swami look after you, or does he look after you? So he says, oh yeah, Kerry, I know where he's staying, I'll take you up there. And so, in the dark of night, he walks me all the way, not exactly full of streetlights up there. He walks me 2 or 3 kilometres up to Whitefield to where Kerry's staying and shows me there's no way I would have found the world, Yeah. And so I meet Kerry, and that was just amazing,
Right.
Just to find him like that. This was Swami. And so we were all staying there in rooms. Swami was only giving darshan Tuesdays and Sundays, and then after a few weeks he went to Prashanti, so June. So I went to Prashanti and got the experience of Prashanti with the daily sort of sadhana and routine that they have.
How many days you stayed in Prashanti?
Only a week.
1 week.
Only a week, yeah. I mean, I found the heat was a bit of a shock to me in India. I found that difficult to hear. I ended up going back earlier than I intended in the end, because I'd sort of changed my flights when I was just, because I was disappointed because we were only seeing Swami, actually Thursdays and Sundays, but after a week, he actually went off to Uti. And we had a big kerfuffle trying to organise taxis and everything, which all fell through.
So how many trips have you made so far?
I've done 9 trips to India so far. I just did my 9th one last year.
Last year. Oh, good one. So a good experience. Can you tell us some other experience about your visit to Prashanti?
Well, yeah, on the 21st of May in Vrindavan, we went down and joined Naga Sankirtan. So I had carried her, taken by the hand sort of thing. So we waltzed off down to Naga Sankirtan, and I joined the Naga Sankirtan group. We went around Katagodi, the village, you do a big circuit, and come back in the gate. And Swami comes out on the balcony to give you darshan. So...
Amazing.
So this was my first darshan of Swami, who I'd waited so long to see. And this is how I felt at the time.
Yeah, of course.
I'm just sitting there watching him come out in the orange robe, and we're singing Arati to him, Lord of the Universe.
Great. Yeah.
And emotion just welled up in me, and tears just flowed down my face. This experience you can't describe.
Oh, yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, that was wonderful. So that was my first darshan of Swami. So that was really good. And then, after that wonderful moment, that was the Sunday, nothing more till Thursday, and then he went to Uti. He couldn't get there. This was really tough. And a little aside, there was other gurus around. There was Shiva Bali Yogi in Bangalore. There was somebody else down in Sri Lanka. And these guys who I was staying with, they knew all about these different guys, and we talk about them, and some had been to see the different ones, and they were more accessible, of course, you see. So this was catching my interest. And I was thinking, I wouldn't mind going to see, at least you could go and see someone, well, if I couldn't see Swami, I'd like to go and see somebody, it was more accessible too. And I'm thinking about, this might be interesting, I wouldn't mind trying to do that, instead of just sitting around here waiting, Never knew when Swami was coming back from Uti. Would you believe it, I'm reading this book of Swami's, and he says, you come to India, and then you want to go off and see all these other gurus and yogis, you should stay here. And I was thinking, okay, it's like, it's like, talk about a message. It was like, okay, that's it. I can't anymore. I mean, it was wonderful to do his day. It was, of course, the best advice ever. And it was such a direct response from Swami telling me. I wasn't even asking about it. I didn't ask him, as I remember. He just came and told me, and boy, was that ringing alarm bells. And I thought, wow, okay, that's it. I'm not going anywhere. Forget those guys.
So who was the translator those days?
Kasturi mostly.
Kasturi, okay.
Kasturi, yeah. So I probably saw him a bit on that trip. So that was 1981.
Right.
So I went. Otherwise, it was just participating in the ashram, the darshan. 1981. I touched his foot, one foot.
Right.
At Vrindavan. We had darshan there as, it was nothing like these days. You didn't appreciate how close you were.
Yeah.
You just, if you were further back than the second row, you felt a bit annoyed, It's like, it was amazing to think about the difference. I didn't realise how lucky I was. I thought all those guys who had been before me were so lucky. Nowadays it was good. So, you're so close to Swami, if you could see him from here to the other side of the wall away. And one day when he walked around, I did get to touch his feet. And that's when I first experienced that, which I know people do experience, that tremory feeling. You know, it's like you're not actually shaking, I don't think you are anyway, but your body somehow feels that tremory. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think everybody experiences it, Swami, at some stage. It's you know, it's an indefinable experience, because you always feel like this is what you feel like, you know, inside. And I even felt it even just after Mahashivaratri, end of Mahashivaratri, just 2 nights ago. Almost felt just a slight touch of that.
Right.
You know, I mentioned that specifically. So I got to touch his feet. So, you know, great blessing if you can touch his feet. It was wonderful for me too. And that was the highlight of that experience, I guess, that particular trip. Went again in 1985 and 1987. Both times October to December sort of thing, about 5 weeks each time. I'm not sure if it was 85. I think it was 85. I was there with, there were a group of us there. We actually had an interview at that stage.
All right.
I think, I'm pretty sure the day was October 26th. I have to ask Madeline, and it was the day, would have been, because her birthday is the October 25th, so I didn't realise at the time, but what a blessing for her. It was like, what a birthday present. Might have even been on her birthday, but I think it was the 26th. And amazing that I can't remember that day that I got an interview. But anyway, we got an interview. So there were 5 of us. We went to
all from New Zealand? 5 from New Zealand?
Yes.
Yep.
It was myself, Madeline, Barbara McKelly, Sandra Smith, and John Porter. John was a fairly big Māori guy. A very quiet man, very deep thinker. And it was him that got called up for the interview.
Oh, right.
So here's John. By this time, you know, this is 1985, so I'm kind of like an old hand at this stage, relatively speaking. You know, John's totally new. And as new people would be, they don't understand that, you know, that things can't happen, don't happen, you know. It's like, you know, so all those things that, you know, never happen to you, they just get it, you know, sort of thing, you know. So he got called up for the interview. It was only later on, he sort of says to me, you know, he says, you know, I'm starting to realise what you mean about, you know, how fortunate we were getting that interview. It was like only the first or second day. And so we all brush up, you know.
Would you like to share what happened at the interview?
Yeah. So I remember I'm sitting outside and I'm thinking, you know, somehow you become aware of all the bad things that could go wrong, or, you know, I felt like you know, someone ready to see like somebody waiting outside to see the headmaster, to be honest. I was very kind of conscious of this. I shouldn't have had that thought really, but I think it was detrimental. So we get in there, 5 of us in, and he calls us into the private room. There weren't a huge number of people there. Calls us into the private room, all 5 together. We're just sitting in a little semicircle around him, and he says a bit to each of us. And then, you know, he said a little bit to me, talked about, you know, bumps and jumps, you know, someone's up there, down here, that sort of thing. And he started by saying, and how are you, sir? And his accent was so thick, and I couldn't hear him. Not that I couldn't hear him, I mean, I couldn't understand him. And how are you, sir? He said it twice, and I'm so embarrassed. Here I am, sitting with the Lord of the US, Swami, and he's talking to me, and I can't understand him. I was like, oh, this is like a desperate situation to be in. I would not have picked this one, you know. I would not have expected it to be like that. Swami himself talking to me, and I can't understand what he's saying. I was so embarrassed, you know, and then and nervous too. And then the others are saying, how are you, sir? They said, and translating for me. Oh, I said, oh, very good, Swami. Very happy now that I'm here with you, Swami, I said. And then he said, I came to you in a dream. And I'm trying to remember this dream. I said, a dream, Swami? I'd had a couple of dreams, actually, but I'm trying to think. I was expecting it to sort of suddenly manifest in my mind. I was thinking, oh, yes. But it didn't. So I'm thinking, dream, Swami. Yes, I came to you in a dream. My first experience of Swami. It was asserting his authority. I said, yes, Swami. You know, it's like he said it a couple of times, like, yes, I came to you in a dream. He said it very firmly, you know, and the energy that went with it was the amazing thing. You know, you just felt this authority, and, you know, it's like, that's it. Yes, Swami. Yes, Swami. You know, because I remember a dream, but it wasn't actually, I think dreaming meant it wasn't Swami. You know, Swami will not come necessarily in his own form. And so it was just brief with me. And the other thing that stood out for me in that interview was when he was talking to one of the others, and they were talking about people coming, more Westerners coming along, and how it was difficult for them to, what's the word, have an affinity for, or feel comfortable in the budgeon format as we had it, sort of thing. And I remember he said, I want quality, not quantity.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, but Swami, he said, I want quality, not quantity. And I said, yes, but Swami, I want quality, not quantity. And again, I can only do a very poor imitation. That authority was like, even more so when he spoke to me, that authority was like so absolute, just like the force just went out and hit you. I want quality, not quantity. It was like the third time. No argument, yes, Swami. We were all silenced, boy, I mean, it's, I can hardly emphasize, sorry, I'm dwelling on it because I can hardly emphasize the experience of it was that feeling.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what he said, that feeling of authority was like so, and the energy was so amazing. So, and this bit later I realized, you can be a king or a queen or a president, wherever you come from. When you sit in front of Swami, you are the child, and he is the absolute master. Nobody has authority over Swami. That force will just override everything. But it was also an extremely important teaching. I want quality, not quantity.
So how long did that interview go for?
10 minutes,
10
maybe.
Minutes,
You keep track time, but that was 10 minutes. Then we all went out, and then another thing I remember is he said, we will talk later. We will talk again later. I think that was his actual words, pretty much like that. We will talk again later. Well, we all know what that means, don't we? Yeah, now, next lifetime, 10 lifetimes,
Yeah.
And so we're sitting outside and in the bigger room, and he takes some other people there. I think I saw him create a ring or something for these other people, which is all pretty amazing. Happens so fast, it's like just like pulling something out of your pocket and giving it to somebody, and it's all over, and you think, wow, he just actually created matter. He created something, it goes by so quick and so naturally. You don't even think about it almost, and then you think, wow, that was something, a miraculous event. History just happened there, Everyday thing for Swami, of course. And then a couple of one of the ladies was saying, when is he going to see us? When is he going to see us again? I said, well, he just said, we'll talk again later. And she's sort of questioning this.
Yeah.
Swami just walks across at the stage, and he looks over. He says, what did I say? And I looked at him, and he says, Swami, that's just, what did I say? And he said, oh, we'll talk again later. He said, so don't ask.
Yeah.
Again, it wasn't loud, but it was absolutely firm.
Uh-huh.
So it was saying, we're devotees. So you might not say this. So that was a blessing. You might not say that to everybody. We're devotees. The Guru has spoken. Don't question it. He said, I'll talk again later. Don't say when, where, or what. I say I'll talk again later. I will talk to you later. You do not question the word of God. That made a strong impact too. So
a lot of messages came through that interview.
And there always is, sometimes, and it's it's easy to miss them. And even looking back, I think about those things he said. The fact that I couldn't understand him. You can ponder on that and thinking, yeah, okay. So maybe the message there was, yes, you're not really understanding me. You've got a lot way to go before you really get my message. You're not hearing me properly. All sorts of things. Even a week later, he comes walking across the sand, we've had this interview, and he comes say, you think you're best buddies now, sort of thing. You're not necessarily going to get an interview or anything. But he walks across the sand, and he's like, oh, wow, I think I had a front row.
Yeah.
And he's comes to me, It's like, oh, it's all right, And he says, where are you from? He asked very casually. New Zealand. New Zealand. And it's like, Swami, you just saw me last week, it's like, and that's right, where are you from? New Zealand. Very good. And then he moved on, and it was like 10 years later, before I remember sitting thinking about it one day, and like, it's so obvious, but you know, like this idea of where are you from? You know, and I'm just saying New Zealand. It never even went through my mind, the obvious thing about, you know, where we're really from.
Where from, where your Atma,
you know, of course, if you say to him, Swami, I'm from you, he says, from me, what country are you from? You know he's going to say something like that. Whatever you say, you're going to be wrong. You're trying to be clever, because that's just your ego.
Yeah.
But it was so much later, I'm thinking, no, Swami, he's patient.
Yeah.
He didn't come and say, you know, in a dream or something later, or give me a prompt and say, have you thought about what I said? You know, there's a message there. He just lets you work it out. He's got all the time in the universe. He is all the time in the universe. And I find it interesting that, you know, 10 years later, something clicks, or more even, and I think about that, where are you from? And it's at those times that, you know, maybe it just sinks in, yes, where am I from? And maybe it's another 10 years before you even get a deeper insight into that, you know.
Yeah.
Even as on surface it seems obvious. But again, all that was a learning experience. I also, at that state, now I'm not sure if it was that trip, I went again 2 years later, same time, with another friend. But one of those trips, I think it was the first one, because we were lucky. At that time, they just started having talks by Westerners. So in 85, Hislop was there.
Oh, right.
You know, I mean, Hislop. We'll need another interview for me to talk about Hislop. He was just one of my most favourite people. Loved the Jack Hislop. So wonderful.
He visited New Zealand too, didn't he?
He did, yeah, in 93. And I was so blessed again, by the grace of God, to get quite close to him at one point there. And have some good discussions. So he would give talks, and Castori would give talks. And there were some other people too, but of course, you know, those days, you know, everybody would flock to hear them, you know, because it was wonderful. They had the most amazing experiences. Hislop was very sort of more intellectual a little bit, and Castori was just so full of joy and smiling, you know, and he was a joy to hear. They were both wonderful to hear, both. So what I remember about Castori, you know, such a humble man, such a joyful man, you know, and it's something we all should reflect on, you know, because I see this in Christians, that a lot of them do sometimes tend to live in joy, and I think I'm not living in joy, and I look around, I'm thinking, to be honest, I don't think we have this sense of living in joy, even though we've seen God and He's touched Him and heard Him, and I think it's something to ponder on. You know, you can't pretend that. We're foolish if we try to pretend. Well, almost. Swami does say, you know, first pretend, then you will tend to, and then you'll end up tend to end. That came from a former student of Swami's actually. And I was listening to a talk by Castori, so afterwards, and they were always so joyful. Yeah. He was such an amazing guy. I highly recommend reading Loving God. It's a wonderful book about his life as Swami. And then at the end, we were all going out, and Castori was there, and there was an Indian man from America. So like Indian. Yeah. You get this confusion about American Indian. It wasn't an American Indian, it was a Native American Indian. So he was an Indian man from America, you know, he had this American accent. And he was quite a big fellow actually, about, you know, 30 or something. And he must have asked, I could tell this man, he must have asked if he could touch Castori, you know, if he, in some way. And Castori said, you know, he's just standing, he says, touch me, burst in this beautiful big smile. My boy, he said, and he grabbed him around the shoulder. Of course you can touch me. And he grabbed him around the shoulder and gave him a big hug. Look, it was a joy to see. Yeah. It was like this joy burst forth in the atmosphere. You couldn't see it, but it was, well, you could see the smile on his face. It was just like a burst of water or something showering us. There was this joy just burst over us. It was like watching a father reunite with his son or something. You know, he said this, my boy, and he grabbed him and hugged him tight. And this guy, you know, he melted and he was just so overjoyed himself, you know. It was lovely. It was a moment of beauty. And I just smiled. It was like looking like with a father and his child, a mother and a baby. It was a beautiful thing to watch. I'll remember it all my life with the grace of God. And so I walked out, and I was walking across the sand to go away. As I walked away, suddenly, as I was walking, I got tremory, just like when I touched Swami's feet. I started getting that tremory feeling. Emotions started coming up inside of me, and tears started coming down my eyes. That was that energy had just gone out and into me, and I was amazed. So Kasturi, being with Swami so long and so close to him, what an energy he carried. He did not touch me. I don't know what that man has some amazing stories. I'd love to run into him again and talk about that experience and what happened with him. Because I'm walking away and I'm feeling this amazing energy going through me, and I'm crying, and I think, wow, what energy for him to carry that. It's just like when I touched Swami's feet, or even more so. Man,
same feeling,
Special man, Kasturi.
So that was what year?
So that was 1985.
85.
That trip, because he passed away. Oh yeah, he passed away in July 87, I think. So that would be 1985.
So can you tell us something about your last trip you made?
Last trip, well, it was just last year. Swami's passed away now. Everything's different. We did quite a trip in South India because my wife's from Kerala, so we visited the whole lot of temples in South India, and only spent about a week in Prashanti. I got extremely ill. It wasn't for long, 3 days, but I don't think I've ever felt so ill in my life, to be honest. I was actually very worried that I might not be able to make it back. Might not be able to travel back on time, and I'm thinking, Swami, I wanted to stay longer, but I'm not sure if I wanted to be in this way, So, but it was still a wonderful trip, and it was a different atmosphere.
Okay, so coming back to New Zealand in terms of the first newsletter, how it all started?
So in our first year, can I emphasise how busy we were, to be honest. So we had like the bhajans in the week, then we'd have the bhajans on Sunday night along with the devotional sing, and we'd often sing quite a lot of English songs because John was a musician, and he had some sort of even converted songs himself that he'd sing to Swami. I remember he did a great job of James Taylor's song, "In my mind I'm gone to Carolina." In my mind, I'm going to put a party.
So you made that one there.
And he, it was beautiful actually. We didn't sing that a lot, but I think he just privately might have sung that. I don't think we actually sang that line. Another did the Cat Stevens song, "How Can I Tell You That I Love You?" It's another beautiful devotional song. So it's great you can actually convert some normal love songs to beautiful devotional songs to Swami. Yes. But we would sing have some nice English singing. We'd have study circles. And we had the movies too. So in Goodies Bookshop, I bought James Box movies. Kerry, my friend who I mentioned I met on my first trip in Shanti, he bought a projector on his way back. See, and video was very new at that stage. Hardly anybody had one at that stage, 1980, 81.
So this was 16mm movies?
8mm.
8mm, okay.
We got, So we had these 8mm movies. He got a projector, she just named it the centre, and so we could see these movies. So it was a bit of a rigmarole, having to set up and get a screen and everything, get it all set up so we could watch. So we'd watch these regularly, movies as well, and that was wonderful. So, and then Jeannie, I think about June, Jeannie started the what actually was the first EHV class in the country, and that continued all year. And Jeannie's children went to the Rudolf Steiner School, which was close by to them. They were into that, so their children were there. So she actually got a few children from there as well, going from friends of children. So again, there was no Indians. So it was a very EHV class as opposed to SSE. And that was really wonderful. So it was a great experience, and she did very well with that. Considering again, this is the times when this is really out of left field kind of thing. Swami's teachings, as it were, or an Indian holy man. So, and we had another retreat in June, and we had another retreat in October. We'd also go out, people would ask us to come and give talks. So like they know the Psychic Centre every year probably. For those first few years we'd go and give a talk to the local Psychic Centre over in Kingsland, I think they would meet. and probably 2 or 3 different groups a year would go out and show a film and give a talk about Swami. Hamilton there were people, devotees in Hamilton, so we'd go down probably a couple of times a year and have a bhajan down there.
Oh, right, okay.
And they of course then started their own bhajans as well. So there were some families.
So how were you passing this message? You were having monthly newsletters, or?
We started the newsletter about August. And
what year?
81.
81.
So actually July it probably would have been. So initially it was just going to be, we thought we'd try it bi-monthly. But then, after 2 months we just decided to go monthly. It was well received. People loved it, because who had anything?
Yes, right, yeah.
No internet. This newsletter about Swami. And so, we by this time we'd managed to get a few names, because all these people that came to the retreats, which grew. The first one was 25, we had more at the next one, of course. And so we had a list of people, so we sent this out, and that started growing, and people loved it. And so we started it monthly, and it was just like a sheet of A4 paper or foolscap or whatever, front and back, and 2 sheets or whatever, as we expanded it. And it continued that way for all, 80 months or whatever, and then at some point we changed it to a more of a booklet type, A5 size booklet, gave it a cover. It was still only about 2 leaves at that stage, and then we got to probably 3 leaves. And that was really well received. So we got known to a couple of hundred, and every year we'd sort of just send out a mail list if you want to continue. And most people did, of course. It was free. We sent it out free. So every month, again, we would be having to assemble a newsletter. That was a process,
So that's still continuing now. That's the one that
Madeline took over. Yeah. So and in 1982, we actually had the beginning of 82, we had a week-long retreat over on Koa Island, just north of, across from Sanskrit there, and from Warkworth. That was a week-long one. That was wonderful. I've even got pictures that I can show you of the people going there. And again, you notice the interesting contrast too, that there were so many European people and New Zealanders going at that stage, and yet compared to now, I don't think there's any more. There's less, in fact.
That's right.
I find it interesting thing that it's the way things have developed. And maybe it's my fault. I'm a European. I just haven't set a good enough example. But that was wonderful. So we had a week-long retreat. Some of the children from Jeannie's class that she used to take came across, and we'd spend the mornings doing sadhana. The retreats were always about Swami. We'd present Swami's teachings and have study circles. We'd have music. We'd have recreation time in the afternoon where we'd play basketball or do some games. It was wonderful.
So when was the first time you had some outside guest speakers coming from outside of New Zealand?
I can't remember, to be honest. That would have been like years later.
All right.
We didn't have money to fund anybody, and I don't remember anybody coming in those first 5 years. To be honest, it was probably maybe later in the. I don't even think. I mean, Jagadeesan would visit occasionally, and of course, if he did, we'd probably arrange. I can't remember specifically when he visited. He must have visited more than a couple of times.
Can you recall when was the first national conference?
I can. It was in the beginning of '84.
'84.
Yeah, so we organised something there again, but there wasn't a national council at that stage. That came later. So, people started growing, groups started growing. We were literally, it was called the Auckland Centre at that stage, the Sathya Sai Centre of Auckland.
Yeah.
So we were probably the main centre, if you like, for want of a better term. And so people would write to us, and I'd write, well, sometimes if I was the secretary or whatever, would write back and explain, look, if you want to affiliate, this is how you do it. You have to write to the World Council. It wasn't us, and I appreciated at the time that, look, I just write to them. It wasn't like we had any authority to tell them what to do or anything like this, and that, you start something down there, affiliate, there might be a bigger centre than us before long, who knows, and it doesn't matter.
So you had a centre first?
Yes.
And there were other centres in New Zealand?
Not at the time, no. So just gradually the groups started up.
All
so,
right.
As the newsletter grew, and we'd have our retreats and people would come along from far and wide sort of thing, because we were the only place running them.
So when was the council formed?
The council wasn't formed until 1989.
89.
So we started having, we had a gathering in 1984, which was more like, I think we called it the first national convention, just chose the name convention. And to have something a little more sort of, I guess, centre-oriented, and get people together more specifically from an organisational point of view. Because again, it was still growing, the centres were all still relatively small. But then in 1987, so for 5 years the centre officially was at John and Jeannie's place. I went to India in 1985. Then, a few different things happened which caused a bit of a change with people, it seems, etc. And so they'd had it in the house for quite a while, which, Jeannie had 2 more children, so they now had 4 children. And it's, quite a challenge having something in your house with people visiting all day. We started a library, which was in the house too, so Jeannie would be in charge of lending the books out, sort of thing. People would come, and
So when was the Sai house?
That wasn't pitched until much later, in 1989.
So that's the same year when the council was formed.
Yeah,
almost. Yeah. That's where Richard.
That's
the
it.
first
So
chairperson.
after 1985, I was chairperson for 1986 year, and then Richard just came and knew, and ended up being chairperson straight away because he knew Madeline.
Right.
A very capable man, of course. And so he became chairperson from the beginning of '87. That was where he'd just come back from India. And so he'd read about Swami, he'd come back from India. Madeline had first started coming along about just early in 1983. So she started coming along there. As I remember it, she started getting involved and more involved in 1984. Her son also, Bruno, joined us about the end of '83.
That's his youngest son, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was real solid, real jovial, hardworking, real positive guy. Played the guitar, and he was really positive support too. So we all had a good time together. He was a great help in the centre as well. He became very involved, and I think, again, I'll have to research dates, but at some point Madeline took over the newsletter. I thought it was about the beginning of 1985, but maybe it was '84. And ever since, so like I said, at that stage, the newsletter was in the booklet format, and Madeline took it, and she would add illustrations and put in the articles, herself, and do the question and answer section, and continued it to this very day for the last over 30 years.
Still doing it.
32, 33 years, and still doing it at 95 years of age.
Yeah.
And I was just telling people the other day, she came along to our centre, so we just spontaneously just gave her a little what's the word, salute, as it were, commendation. And I always remember Jack Hislop visited in 1993, and he asked me at the time, he'd been reading it, he said, who answers these questions? And I said, Madeline does. He says, they're very, very good answers. And Jack Hislop was such a discerning and knowledgeable guy, and who knew Swami's teachings better. For him to say that was, I think, one of the greatest compliments.
Right.
And I told Madeline about that. That was a really, really great compliment, and showed the standard of her answers, which definitely were.
While we're on the topic of Hislop, can you tell us some experience that you had with him?
Yeah, amazing man. He came in 1993. Again, by the grace of God, the people he stayed with, very good friends of ours, Hasita and Prini.
Oh, yes.
Prini is an old student of Swami's. And so we had a retreat down near Wellington, south of the North Island, and Hasita came and asked me if I could help sort of be like his bodyguard when I was there, because we had over 200 people there.
Yeah.
And of course everybody wants to crowd around, and someone like Hislop, and I couldn't believe, there was an education, I couldn't believe he really did need bodyguards. And so sure, look, I don't mind helping anyway, but it's like, get me this right. I didn't say it to him like this, but I mean, essentially it's like, so let me get this right. You want me to sort of walk around with Jack Hislop and be near Jack Hislop all day long? Yeah, I'm your man. Take me. Where can I start? I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
What a blessing from Swami.
It would be, yes.
How good he has been to me in my life. These are only simple little things. I didn't have some wonderful, miraculous experiences or miracles, but these things to me are like the great light shining down is so wonderful. I can't express it. And so, I got to literally do that, walk around with him and sit with him, especially at meal times. Because people, I remember one guy, we were down at breakfast. We took him off. He was on his own. A man comes up. I'd already politely told the other guys, you've got to follow Swami's teachings. Told him not to come. He sits down right in front of you. He's you're trying to eat your bowl of cereal. And this man's sitting across from you. He's, sir, he asks him the question, so he puts the spoon down. And he said, no, enough now. We let him ask one or two questions. Yeah, enough now, he has to. And he starts asking again. I'm not kidding, he's got a spoon in there. Asks him again. 3 times this happened, and Jack just laughs, he's so patient, He's literally got a spoon almost to his mouth. We've told the guy twice, and still he's just about to take a mouthful, and the guy starts again. It was a real education about what a sadhana for him.
Of course.
Having to deal with that. And so that's it. We moved the guy at that stage. We didn't grab him arm by arm, but we made him go. He had to go. Yeah. And another time when I was sitting down at breakfast, just to show his humility, he'd been telling us about stories of how he used to go to Tibet. You'll read about it in his book. Some of the 3 best books: what Conversations with God, My Baba and I, and Seeking Divinity.
Seeking Divinity.
Yeah. All his books, which are mostly Swami's talks or conversations. And so he'd been telling us about his visit to temples and to do sadhana in Thailand. Not Thailand, was it Thailand? Yes, or Burma. Anyway, he'd go to these places where they'd get right into the Vipassana meditation and be sitting in a little cave or whatever, and they'll have a meditation master or whatever. And he says, they do different practices, where you'll feel like you're hot all over or cold all over, and all these different, he's telling about this amazing, meditation practice and this sort of thing, and this is supposed to represent your karma burning off or whatever, It was just pretty amazing sort of stuff, and he'd tell us all sorts of these experiences, not to mention, of course, all the experiences with Swami that, we knew about, and that, you'd get these stories about. And I remember Barry just sitting across from us at one point, and he said, so he was talking about self-realization, so are you would you consider yourself realized yourself? And he says, oh no, I'm just a regular fella like you, he says, he just burst out laughing, I'm just a regular fella like you, so sincerely and so humble, and Barry we just laughed, looked at each other and laughed, yeah, sure, Jack, you've just told us the most amazing experiences that, pretty much hardly anybody in the world ever experiences. And here he's just, I'm just a regular fella like you. No regular fella, Jack. You're no regular fella. I mean, even when, I remember Richard telling me, he went to the conference in Brisbane where I think Howard Murphy was there and Jack Hislop, and I think so was, but Jack Hislop was the keynote speaker. The guy gets on the stage and announced, look, I'm sorry, we've got a little bit of a delay. We're still waiting for the keynote speaker to arrive. It's like, and then there's a call, no, he's here, he's down the back, he's here. And he's just sitting down the back. Here's the keynote speaker. He just comes in quietly and just sits down the back and is partaking of the experience sort of thing. Just not one to come in, hey, I'm here, I'm Jack Hislop, I've arrived, can show me to my room, get the servants around. Yeah, he was amazing. I know even when he was speaking, he was so sharp. The minute somebody finished a question, he'd almost, as soon as there was hardly any space, like a tenth of a second of that, and he'd say, well, Swami says. And it was always about what Swami said. Yeah. And if he asked him something which Swami hadn't said anything about, he'd say, well, Swami hasn't said anything on that particular topic, but, if you want to speak to me afterwards about it, I can tell you my views on it. Wouldn't even give his views.
I always use Swami's quote,
I mean, he did, when he came, he did give a talk himself and his views sort of thing, but generally, he would just tell Swami, and when he finished, he would just say, well, I think I'm over my time now. He wouldn't feel like the need, because other people would be, going on, but he would just say, I think I'm over my time now, and he'd just stop.
So he gave a talk here in Mount Eden Center when he was in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a video, not a video, audio of that.
The talk he gave, it was literally verbatim, in fact, pretty much. The stories in his book, My Baba and I. Yeah. Because he'd given them so often, I went around to him speak 5 times, and everyone was like almost verbatim. It was interesting, but again, you can only say the same thing in different ways so many times. He would have said it so many times, hundreds probably. But it was wonderful.
If you had to sum up his message in few words, what would it be?
Well, who am I? Look, in the end, the message is, Swami says it all. I have no message. Swami says it all. And what does he say? He says, love all, serve all. You can't get better than what Swami says, and we have to remember that. It's so often simple, but when we dwell on the meaning, it's so deep. Love all, serve all, because if you love all, it's loving all. Those
Animals,
people on the bus who
everything.
you don't like,
Not
those
only
people
people,
in the traffic,
animals too.
everything, and serve all. Help ever, hurt never. Always be helpful. Don't hurt anybody in thought, word, and deed. When you dwell on it all, it's good. The same. We got it. Doug was in, National President was in. Got an interview one time and asked for a message for New Zealand, and he comes back and he tells us. So you're sitting there. And a message from Swami, you're thinking, oh great, what do you want to hear? Oh look, you're all good New Zealanders, everyone wants to hear you. Look, aren't you a wonderful bunch? You've got gigantic egos, feed our ego, Swami,
Yeah.
or just tell us something. We want some sort of real deep teaching. And so what does he say? He says, be happy. And it's like, oh, okay. But anything else, it's like, but then you stop and think about be happy.
A lot of energy.
And there's so much in it because we're not very good at being happy. Speaking personally, not very good at being happy. And when you focus on it and think about it, ponder on it, you realise that is so deep and more than I can do even. And yet, what a wonderful message. But we're always looking for something, but it's important to remember Swami is the message there. Yeah, it's actually simple, but it's very deep. You have to ponder deeply on it.
Thank you, Mark.
So.
Sarah.